Heading into NFL Week 3 here, and now having 2 games per team under our belt of sample sizes to evaluate here and put forth to our analysis here moving forward the rest of the season. I've got 5 running backs that I'll be buying here ahead of Week 3 games and making an effort to get on my teams for the rest of the season. These are players that I think have a really good chance to put that arrow trending upwards here and improve upon the start that they've had to this 2022 fantasy football season. So if you're new around here, I'm posting multiple fantasy football trade advice videos today, including buy wide receiver segments and sell episodes for these position groups as well. Of course, I've already got a waiver wire episode out and a lessons learned video from week 2 fantasy football. So again, check all that stuff out. We've got a great week 3 playlist all already being put together here, full of content and full of information for you guys to take advantage of. Of course, I say this in every video, or at least I started saying this week, is that if you're new around here, of course, click that subscribe button, but of course, let me know your comments down in the comment section below, your questions, that is, for this week's games. What are you looking for some extra help on? And of course, I encourage this as well. If you guys want to help each other out and contribute to the conversation, you are more than welcome to do that as well. So make sure to take advantage of that. This is an interactive platform here where I want you guys to be able to conversate with me and have conversations with each other as well. So check that stuff out, and I'll see you in the video. All right, here we go. So let's dive into our first player, Leonard Fournette. These first few names here are going to be running backs I'm categorizing as buy low players. The reason I put that in air quotes is because it's really hard to buy low for any running back if we're truly considering the nature of the beast here in fantasy football. In one quarterback leagues, how often or how much capital it takes to get these players off of some teams, it can be rather difficult. And even though Leonard Fournette has not really played up to expectations so far, at least this past week, he did have a really nice week 1 game, but still hasn't found the end zone. I do understand that it might not be the most, simple task to make these trades happen. So these are players, though, that did have some down performances, or I expect more from here in the future, that we did not see super awesome outings from in either week 1 or week 2. Maybe both. You'll have to sit back and wait here and see as we progress our way throughout this video. So as I touched on, Leonard Fournette has not found the end zone yet this season. That is a very irregular thing for him here after last season being such a highly utilized player in that area of the field, that being the red area, the 20-yard line or closer in opponent territory. Leonard Fournette was a running back in the 2021 season that was 3rd in red zone touches at the running back position. And another thing that we've seen him kind of lacking here to start this season is his pass catching involvement. He's coming off of a very inefficient day on the ground this past week, having 24 rushes for 65 yards here. However, what can kind of offset that for running backs in these tougher matchups is being able to catch the football. And when I went back and looked at the numbers from last season, obviously Leonard Fournette being a great safety blanket and check down option out of the backfield, of course making him very, very relevant for fantasy football here. His pass game totals have been super underwhelming to start this season. Again, he did have just 7 fantasy points in half PPR scoring this past week against the Saints, and a large portion of that comes from no end zone trips and little to no receiving involvement. He has just in 2021 he had a 14% target share and averaged 6 targets per game, which put him as the top 3, so the 3rd ranked running back in terms of overall targets at that position group. And this season, he has 6 total targets on the year. So you're seeing a large diminishment in his overall usage in that area of things, in addition to that red zone status. And that's why you've kind of seen some of these lower producing games when, even though he rushes for over 120 yards in week 1, that total still leaves a little bit to be desired, because again, those higher upside plays weren't playing out here and weren't something that was coming to fruition. So moving forward, I am expecting big things for Leonard Fournette. I am expecting him to be a strong running back 1 finisher for this season. He's not necessarily in the elite 8 tier of fantasy football running backs, but this is someone with a very dynamic skill set who is a very trusted safety blanket for Tom Brady out of the backfield, and I definitely think takes a step forward again in a positive direction here with TB12. We have seen a little bit of Rachaad White involvement this year, but for the vast majority of things, Leonard Fournette's snap share has still been right around the area that you want to see. And then again, we just got to see more pass game work. We are going to have a maybe tough matchup again this week against Green Bay. We just saw David Montgomery chop them up on the ground for over 120 yards rushing. However, this team is severely limited. No Mike Evans. You still got Chris Godwin questionable. Julio Jones may not be out there as well. So Tampa could be down to really skin and bones in terms of what you're talking about out of the pass catching room for that team. So that could either be a positive or a negative thing for Leonard Fournette. Maybe it means more touches. Maybe it means more centric game planning around him for the Packers. Whatever the case might be, though, the overall scope of this NFL season, I think it was a tough start for Lenny here, playing two stout defenses early in the season. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys week 1, which again, he had his way on the ground, but then the Saints, especially here in week 2, have kind of kept those totals to an underwhelming number. Next up, it's Javonte Williams, another higher round draft pick at this running back position. But as I noted, running backs, they don't grow on trees. And if you've got an opportunity to get a discounted price on a really good one, you better go out there and take the opportunity to do so. This is a player in his first 2 games. His, real big concern for me was snap share this season. How were they going to distribute the touches between him and Melvin Gordon? And last season, it was a problem. Javonte Williams was just under a 50% snap share for this team, but we've seen that number improve and get better throughout the first 2 weeks of this year. He had a 65% snap share in week 2. Melvin Gordon was at just 32%. He had 15 rushing attempts, 75 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. That's a pretty efficient split for a lead running back. And he had 4 targets out of the backfield. He had 12 targets out of the backfield in week 1. So we were just talking about how Leonard Fournette's kind of leaving a little bit to be desired in that area. It's something I think he gets better at. Javonte is doing those things. He is getting you those valuable looks out of the backfield and really being someone that contributes in that passing game. In both weeks, he's narrowly missed out on a rushing touchdown. He got tackled again this week, just short of the end zone, obviously, in week 1. The defense, the goal line defense of the Seattle Seahawks, the first team all preseason defensive line there, looked like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens inside the red area, knocking 2 fumbles out of these Broncos running backs' grasps, and obviously creating those into turnovers there. I don't think that's going to be a continual issue here. The one concern you do have for Denver's offense is that right now things are sputtering a little bit. We don't know if it's a Russell Wilson thing. A lot of people think it's a Nathaniel Hackett thing, a play calling issue. You see them burning through their timeouts, and they just look a little bit discombobulated in terms of their preparation for these games. I'm thinking things get better, though. I'm hoping that they can iron out their kinks here and, of course, get on track and be that high-level producing offense that we expected them to be. But they are 1-1, and they are, a very competitively won first game here against the Houston Texans. So 2 bad opponents on the schedule end up being a narrow victory and a narrow loss for Denver. I am confident, though, in Javonte Williams again. We're seeing Melvin Gordon's role shrink, 41% snap share in week 1, down to 32% here in week 2. And the other thing I want to note for Gordon, the reason that I'm really not scared of him here is the receiving involvement. Javonte is eating up a large portion of that pie. Again, having 16 targets through the first 2 weeks of the season. Melvin Gordon has 3 targets in 2 weeks and 20 total yards through the air. So those efficient touches, those valuable opportunities out of the backfield, while they might still be kind of a split on the goal line, those passing game work and that utility there is trending the direction of a Javonte Williams. James Conner is my next player here, another top 3 round pick. This is a mid to late 3rd rounder from our drafts this season. And James Conner's had 2 disappointing opening games. So we'll say it exactly like it is. But my estimation, what my assessment is here, is he had a terrible week 1 game script, a game in which the Arizona Cardinals were wiped off the face of the earth. The Kansas City Chiefs routed them from start to finish, and in week 2 you get an ankle injury. And now the good news about the ankle injury is A, it lowers his stock, it makes him easier to acquire, it'll scare some fantasy owners that saw that low point total and see obviously his name on the injury report here. But the other report alongside that is that it's not expected to be a serious injury, which means we can kind of take a sigh of relief here and move forward into week 3 with James Conner resuming this workhorse running back role for the team. The reason that I am optimistic on him still this season is because in that week 1 blowout, you saw 6 targets head his direction from Kyler Murray, a guy in that game who had a 72% snap share, a really, really good number for a do-it-all 3-down player for this team. He also has 1 rushing touchdown this season, again, kind of showing you that he can go back to Maybe not the same level of touchdown, efficiency and conversion rate per touch that he had last year, but a guy that can definitely still go out there, be a certified and legitimate goal line back for this Cardinals team, which has kind of had a sputtering start this season as well. Like I said, the Bucs offense got off to a slow start. The Broncos offense is getting off to a slow start. The Cardinals are another group in that category. They were barely able to turn things around here, and really, they should have lost that game because the Raiders were driving into their territory to win that field goal or get a field goal to win that contest in overtime. And then Hunter Renfrow, does his best impression of, I'm trying to think of someone that's just been fumbling touches away for his career and just to, make a big joke out of him. But essentially, the point being, you're seeing a player that or an offense that's struggling and got bailed out by a defensive touchdown to win that game because of back-to-back Hunter Renfrow turnovers. So James Conner, someone who I think that if this offense is able to stabilize itself here, hopefully with health concerns in the passing game maybe being resolved, Rondale Moore, eventually, it is going to be until week 7 for DeAndre Hopkins, but once he gets back out there, hopefully this team could become a little bit more offensively balanced, and that'll allow him to start getting back to those workhorse level touch numbers, because the most rushing attempts we saw him get were 10 in week 1, and he only had 26 yards, 2.6 yards per carry. So we need more efficiency, we need closer games for more goal line work, and we need him to keep being a factor in the receiving game. The good news, though, again, the ankle injury is considered minor. He also did not leave the contest in terms of going to the locker room and undressing. He stayed suited up with his helmet off on the sideline, so that's promising as well. All things you like to hear here. And I think that Conner does have the potential to be an elite running back too in 12-team formats, or maybe even slip himself into the RB1 discussion here as a consistent contributor, especially, it really isn't just a standard or a PPR running back because of his involvement in the receiving game in addition to his size and goal line utility here. 18 total touchdowns from him last year. He can really do it all in all different scoring formats. So a running back I feel really good about going forward. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it this year, but Dameon Pierce stays on the list for today's episode. We're on ourselves right now. We've got ourselves an emotional roller coaster of events, if you will, with this Houston Texans backfield. It's week 1. We're all expecting Dameon Pierce to kind of be that breakout running back for the rookie class this season, the guy that's going to get the first and most immediate shot at things to really become a first option player for an NFL offense. And then Rex Burkhead commands 71% of the snaps, and Dameon Pierce is left with a lowly 29% snap share. And then in week 2, we're like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little bit. It looks like Denver's going to blow him out. Rex Burkhead has himself the opportunity to be a very viable third down receiving back in that game. And lo and behold, here comes Dameon Pierce, ripping right back from 29% in week 1 to a 62% snap share in week 2. That'll work. That can get things done for him here this season. If he gets more touches and continues to see his workload increase on a weekly basis, he had 15 rushes this week for 4.6 yards per carry, had 1 reception as well. Not going to be someone that I project to be super involved in the receiving phase of things, but he is a very hard and vicious runner. I really like to see that. You talk about a Javonte Williams. I've said this 3 times over the last week, but it sounds like, someone's getting cracked with a whip every time he makes contact, because boy, does he just smack into defenders. Dameon Pierce doesn't have that type of size and physicality, but he runs hard. He puts those shoulder pads down. He keeps those legs churning. And I think that this Texans really needs a rushing backbone for this offense, because they can't rely on Davis Mills to drop back and win games airing the ball out. And we ended up seeing him struggle in that contest when they, really... They probably should have ran the football more in this contest. Let's say that, we should have seen Dameon Pierce, who got 15 touches this week, get 20 or 25. And maybe it's a coaching staff concern where they're just trying to ease him into things here. They don't know if he's ready, but I feel like a Dameon Pierce breakout is right around the corner. Again, he's not going to be the most dynamic back in the NFL. He's not going to be a guy catching a high volume of passes, but his price is so cheap. And if you can go out there and get him, he could be a rest of season starter for your lineup week 4 and beyond, if that's eventually when they cut the tie here and just let him go. So Dameon Pierce for a 3rd straight week makes the buys list. If you bought him earlier and you're stashing him, things are looking up and trending in a positive direction for you. I know the point totals weren't awesome this week. I think it was 6.5 points in half PPR. But again, things are headed the right direction. And then A.J. Dillon, I accidentally spoiled it. I accidentally gave it away here. But man, this seems like, A.J. Dillon is going to be more similar to James Robinson than I had hoped. But I still think this role, after coming off of a disappointing game where I had him as a must-start player, it looked like week 1, Aaron Jones had himself an A.J. Dillon problem. And now, in hindsight, it looks like these two are going to be each other's problem. And we're going to have to flip a coin and really decide who is going to be the more valuable player on a given week basis. You'll see Aaron Jones have games like he had here in week 2, which the Chicago Bears are typically a matchup in which he struggles against. But besides the point, he'll go out there and he'll rush super efficiently. He'll look, as explosive as any running back in the National Football League. He'll be a dynamic rushing and receiving weapon. And then he'll go out and have games like he had week 1 where he was pretty disappointing. Now, he was efficient in that game, but the touches didn't bounce his direction. A.J. Dillon here got the touches in week 2. So I don't want to just dismiss that and act like he wasn't getting incorporated into this offense. He just caught one pass. Aaron Rodgers kind of did him dirty. He left a few fantasy points hanging on the table here. And A.J. Dillon, frankly, is a player who is still used like a workhorse running back in this game. Now, he only had a 57% snap share, so those aren't really true workhorse levels of just seeing the football field. Aaron Jones, in comparison, had a 59% snap share, so if you compare that to week 1, it was 61% Jones, 51% Dillon. Things even evened up a little bit here, and we saw a lot of 2 running back sets in this Sunday Night Football game as well. But what I want to say is that A.J. Dillon had 21 opportunities to touch the football in this game. 2 of them got totally snubbed from him. There was one play, I swear to God, he would have gained 20 yards. Aaron Rodgers, it was a quick 2-step hitch and throw out into the flat on the left side of the field. A.J. Dillon would have caught that pass. He's a very fluent pass catcher. Turned upfield, got ahead of steamrolling, and probably would have absolutely bulldozed somebody, the first cornerback or safety that came up to make that tackle. But instead, Aaron Rodgers just kind of knuckles it right at his ankles, and he has no shot of catching the football. Another play, Aaron Rodgers goes in for a reverse pivot handoff to A.J. Dillon, gets in the path of A.J. Dillon, and it's this awkward exchange. Thank freaking God they classified it as an Aaron Rodgers fumble and not an A.J. Dillon fumble, because I truly don't think it was his fault. Aaron, pats it off his elbow, and it was just this really awkward play. So we could have seen, 20, 25 more yards. Who knows what that rushing attempt would have resulted in. Sometimes those reverse pivot counter plays can go for some pretty big gains. Dillon wasn't having the breakaway runs like Aaron Jones was, though. I think one of the things that tips the hand for defenses, I saw a stat that they showed on the broadcast, is that A.J. Dillon, since entering the league, has the highest percentage of runs between the tackles of any player in the NFL. So you know that he's running it inside the guards or inside the center guard gap, in between the guard tackle gap. He's going somewhere in between the numbers. He's not breaking runs off outside like Aaron Jones is doing. So that's one of the reasons why I wonder maybe he's never going to be nearly as efficient as an Aaron Jones can be. He's not as explosive, but he is absolutely a skilled, multifaceted, dynamic playmaker. And the other things that we didn't see in this matchup are goal line carries. We did see red zone touches, which Aaron Jones had 2 of to A.J. Dillon's 3 total red zone touches last week. None of them were true goal line rushing attempts, though. There was actually a 2-back set. I saw them both out there. I was like, please, Matt LaFleur, call a play to get Dillon the football. I just knew it in my heart deep down, though, watching that snap. It was going to be a sweep to Aaron Jones. And sure enough, they pulled A.J. Dillon around the right side of the offensive line, got him out in space, basically using him like a fullback. And he didn't even really have to block a guy that hard. He just made himself a human body shield. And Aaron Jones prances into the end zone for his second touchdown of the day. So, moral of the story, both of these running backs can coexist. The issue is going to be predicting which one is going to have the most success in a given matchup. But it's hard for me, especially if you're a weaker RB team, to sit A.J. Dillon because his outlook every week is so good. Again, he had 21 opportunities this week, which is better than some legitimately fantasy relevant running backs that we start in a week in, week out basis get. You talk about Nick Chubb, if he gets 16 or 15 rushing attempts, sure, he'll be one of the most efficient rushers in the NFL with those touches. But when he's not catching passes out of the backfield, A.J. Dillon's going to have more quote-unquote work than Chubb will have. He's just not running the ball at as high of a level. So that's, of course, a totally different topic and discussion for another time. But the moral of the story is I am still high on what A.J. Dillon represents for fantasy football lineups this season. I think he's got a lot to offer. And again, one more time, 5 players to buy for Week 3 fantasy football at the running back position: Leonard Fournette, Javonte Williams, James Conner, A.J. Dillon, and Dameon Pierce. Go make offers for him. Go see what you can do. Let me know your trade questions in the comment section below. Subscribe, turn the bell on, get here right away for the next video, and I will see you there. Peace out.